My daughter Lisa was beaming with happiness when I gave her a $150,000 car, but her boyfriend Nicholas tricked her, re-registered the car for himself, and mockingly said, "You're my driver now." His mother Margaret added, "You're not going anywhere from us." They thought there was no one to protect her, but one phone call from me wiped away their smiles forever, and they will long regret crossing me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The keys felt heavier than they should have, cold and sharp in my palm, as I stood under the dealership's glaring lights. The Tesla Model S gleamed behind me, its red paint catching every reflection like a polished ruby. Lisa's laughter echoed across the showroom, bright and unguarded, as she slid into the driver's seat, her fingers brushing the steering wheel like it was a dream she might wake from. "Dad, this is unreal," she said, her voice high with excitement. Her brown eyes sparkled, just like they did when she was 6 and I'd surprised her with a bike. I'd saved for years for this moment, sold my old truck, skimped on dinners out. It was worth every penny to see her like this. The salesman hovered nearby, his smile too wide, his pen tapping the paperwork on the glass counter. I ignored him, watching Lisa test the touchscreen, her ponytail bouncing as she leaned forward. The air smelled of new leather and ambition, the kind of place that made you feel like you'd made it. I'd made it, for her. But then she said it, casual, like it was nothing. "Nick's gonna love driving this with me. He says we'll take it on our wedding trips." My stomach tightened. Nicholas, her boyfriend of barely a year, with his slick grin and too many questions about my retirement savings. I remembered him at our last family dinner, leaning across the table, asking, "So, Gary, you must have a nice nest egg, huh?" Like it was a joke. It wasn't. I'd seen men like him before, back when I was a financial consultant, charmers who thought they could outsmart everyone. "Lisa," I said, keeping my tone light, "this car's for you, not for joyrides with Nick." I handed her the keys, forcing a smile. She took them, but her brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice sharp now, like I'd poked a bruise. The salesman coughed, retreating behind the counter. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I'm just saying, kiddo, be careful. He's been asking about my finances. That's not normal." I wanted to say more, how I didn't trust his lazy swagger, how his eyes never met mine when we talked, but I stopped. She was 21, not a child anymore. Her face flushed, and she clutched the keys so tight her knuckles paled. "You're doing it again, Dad. You never trust anyone I love." Her voice cracked, loud enough that a couple browsing nearby turned to stare. "Nick's not like that. He cares about me." "Lisa, I'm trying to protect you." My chest tightened, the words coming out harder than I meant. "I spent $150,000 on this car for you. I don't want some guy using it, or you." She froze, her lips parting like I'd slapped her. Then she tossed the keys onto the counter, the metal clattering against glass. "You don't get it. I'm not your little girl anymore." She grabbed her purse, the gift ribbon I'd tied to it fluttering like a wounded bird. "I'm driving the car home, alone." "Lisa, wait." I reached for her, but she was already storming toward the Tesla, her heels clicking on the polished floor. The salesman handed me the paperwork, muttering something about warranties, but I barely heard him. I signed where he pointed, my hands shaking, and watched her slide into the driver's seat. The car purred to life, its taillights glowing red as she pulled out of the lot. The ribbon lay crumpled on the floor, a bright slash against the tiles. I took the old bus home, the suburbs blurring past, my mind stuck on Lisa's anger. The ride dragged, and by the time I stepped into the quiet of my house, evening had settled. I stood in the kitchen, clutching my phone, hoping she'd call. The coffee was bitter, but I sipped it, standing in the kitchen where silence pressed against my ears. I'd called Lisa 3 times since the fight at the dealership. No answer. My phone sat on the counter, its dark screen mocking me. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, an old colleague. "Give her time, Gary, she's young." I replied, "Thanks." But time was what I didn't have. Nicholas's smug grin from that dinner flashed in my mind, his questions about my savings. I should have shut him down then. "You make everything okay." My throat tightened. I'd spent years making things okay, staying up to help her study for algebra, selling my truck to buy that damn car. And now? Now she thought I was the enemy. I tried calling her again, pacing to the window. The street outside dark, except for a street lamp's faint glow. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Lisa, it's me," I said, my voice rough. "I'm sorry, just call me back." I hung up, my reflection staring back from the glass. An old man with worry lines deeper than they'd been a week ago. I thought of her at 5, sobbing when she fell off her bike, her knees scraped and bloody. I'd carried her home, whispering, "You're tougher than this." She'd believed me then, but today, when I'd warned her about Nicholas, she'd looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I'd pushed too hard. Maybe I'd lost her for good. I sat back down, the card still in my hand, its words blurring as my eyes stung. I'd solved tougher problems than this at work, untangling clients' finances, outsmarting corporate sharks. I could fix this. I had to. I grabbed my phone again, dialing Lisa's number one last time. The rings dragged on, each one a heartbeat. No answer. I didn't know where she'd gone after the dealership, but her words, "I'm driving the car home, alone," echoed in my head. Maybe she'd gone to Nicholas, seeking comfort, or was driving aimlessly to cool off. I checked my phone every minute, dreading she wouldn't call, but unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then as I set the phone down, it buzzed, sharp and sudden, the screen lighting up the dim room. An unknown number. My pulse jumped. I stared at it, my hand hovering, the glow of the screen like a lifeline in the dark. The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, its vibration rattling against the wood like a warning. My hand froze midair, the mug of cold coffee forgotten. It was the unknown number, the one that had lit up my screen minutes ago. I grabbed my glasses, heart thumping, and answered. "Hello?" My voice sounded thin, fragile. "Dad?" Lisa's voice cracked through the line, thick with tears. "I'm coming home. Half an hour." "Lisa, what's wrong?" I pressed the phone closer, my pulse loud in my ears. "Are you okay?" "I can't talk now," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Nicholas, he took the car keys. I'm in a taxi, coming to you." She didn't answer. A sob, sharp and raw, cut through. Then the line went dead. I stood there, the cold countertop biting into my palm, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, sharp and distant. My mind raced, her voice so small like when she was 7 and fell off the swing in the backyard, her knee bloody, her sobs shaking her whole body. I'd scooped her up then, bandaged her, made it better. But this was different. I moved to the living room, my steps quick, unsteady. The house felt too big, the shadows too deep. I flicked on the porch light, its yellow glow spilling across the lawn, and checked the driveway. Empty. My watch read 9:17. "Half an hour," she'd said. I grabbed a blanket from the couch, its soft weave catching on my calloused fingers. She might be cold. She might need it. I paced to the front window, the glass cool against my hand. The street was quiet, just the sway of trees in the spring breeze, the faint creak of Lisa's old swing still hanging in the backyard. I pictured her at 7, laughing as I pushed her higher, her pigtails flying. "Faster, Dad!" she'd squealed. Her sobs on the phone had sounded just like that day, scared and lost. What had Nicholas done? His smug face flashed in my mind, that dinner, his grin as he asked about my savings. Lisa oblivious beside him. I should have stopped this then. I checked my watch again, 9:22. My fingers tightened on the blanket. Maybe I'd pushed her too far at the dealership, calling out Nicholas like that. "You're too protective," she'd said, her eyes flashing. Had I driven her into his arms? The thought twisted like a knife. I walked to the mantel where a photo of us sat, Lisa at 16, her prom dress sparkling, me grinning beside her. My thumb traced her smile. I'd given her everything, but maybe I'd failed her anyway. A neighbor passed by, their dog tugging at its leash. For a moment, I wondered if I should flag them down, ask for help. But what would I say? My daughter's crying, and I don't know why. I turned away, pacing again, the blanket draped over my arm. The clock ticked louder, each second a hammer. I tried calling Lisa back. No answer. The street lamp outside cast shadows that danced like my fears across the lawn. I stopped at the window again, my breath fogging the glass. What had happened? Had Nicholas hurt her? The thought made my hands clench, the blanket slipping to the floor. I'd spent years protecting her, checking under her bed for monsters. working overtime to pay for her college. I'd outsmarted bigger threats than Nicholas in my consulting days. If he'd touched her, I'd make him regret it. Headlights cut through the dark, sharp and sudden, pulling into the driveway. A taxi. My heart leapt. The door opened, and there she was, Lisa, stepping out, her face streaked with tears, her purse clutched tight. She started toward the house, her steps slow, unsteady. The taxi's headlights glowed behind her, a beacon in the night, and for a moment she looked like my little girl again, coming home. The taxi's headlights sliced through the April night, painting my lawn with stark white light. I stood on the porch, the blanket from the couch heavy in my arms, my heart hammering as the car door opened. Lisa stepped out, her silhouette small against the glow, her face streaked with tears that caught the porch light like shattered glass. Her sweater was crumpled, her purse clutched like a lifeline. I rushed down the steps, gravel crunching under my shoes, and wrapped the blanket around her trembling shoulders. "You're home," I whispered, my voice catching. She collapsed into me, her sob muffled against my chest. "I'm sorry, Dad." I fumbled for my wallet, handing the driver a crumpled 20, barely glancing at him as he nodded and pulled away. The exhaust lingered, sharp in the cool air, as I guided Lisa toward the house, one arm around her. Her steps were unsteady, her breath hitching. Inside, the living room welcomed us with its familiar clutter, faded floral curtains, a sagging couch, the mantel clock ticking like a heartbeat. I eased her onto the couch, the blanket pooling around her, and grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen. My hands were steady, but my mind raced, replaying her sob from the phone call an hour ago. "Lisa, talk to me," I said, sitting beside her, the water glass cold against my palm. Her mascara smudged her cheeks, her eyes red and raw. She took the glass, her hands shaking, and sipped, staring at the floor. "I messed up," she said, her voice small, like she was 10 again, confessing to a broken vase. "After our fight, I drove to Nick's place. I needed him." She paused, swallowing hard, but he wasn't comforting. He kept asking about the car, how much it cost, how much money you have. His mom, Margaret, was there too, poking at me, saying you must have secret accounts. I clenched my jaw, the armrest digging into my palm. Nicholas's smirk flashed in my mind, that dinner where he'd probed about my savings, his eyes glinting like a predator's. "Go on," I said, keeping my voice even. Lisa's fingers twisted the blanket's edge. "Nick said I should put the car in his name, to protect it, in case you tried to take it back. I know it sounds stupid now, but he made it seem logical." Margaret kept nodding, saying it was the smart move. Her voice cracked. "I signed the papers, Dad." And then Nick laughed, pocketed the keys, and said, "You're my driver now." Margaret leaned in, all smug, and said, "You're not going anywhere from us." My breath caught, a hot spike of anger flaring in my chest. My girl, my only girl, reduced to their pawn. I stood, pacing to the mantel, where a photo of Lisa at 10 grinned back, her pigtails tied with red ribbons. I'd fixed her broken toys then, sworn no one would hurt her. Now this. "They mocked you?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. Lisa nodded, tears spilling again. "I thought he loved me, Dad, but he just wanted the car. I feel so stupid." Her words broke, each one a dagger in my chest. I sat back down, pulling her close, her head resting on my shoulder. Her perfume, faint and floral, mixed with the musty warmth of the blanket. "You're not stupid," I said, stroking her hair, though my mind churned with images of Nicholas's smug face, Margaret's taunting grin. "You trusted them? That's not a crime." I wanted to say more, to vow I'd crush them, but her exhaustion stopped me. Her eyes drooped, her breathing slowing. "Let's get you to bed," I said, helping her up. We climbed the stairs, the floorboards creaking, and I tucked her into her old bedroom. Her childhood teddy bear sat on the pillow, its button eyes watching as I pulled the quilt over her. She was already half asleep, her face softer now, younger. I closed the door, the click loud in the silent hall, and stood there, fists clenched, staring at my phone. Their words echoed. "You're my driver now. You're not going anywhere." They thought they'd won. They thought I was just an old man with a checkbook. My anger burned, a fire waiting for kindling, and I knew this was only the beginning. I went downstairs, unable to sleep, and sat in the living room, scrolling through old contacts on my phone, searching for someone who could help. Anger simmered, but I knew I had to play it smart. The hours dragged, and when the first rays of light slipped through the blinds, I was already in the kitchen, brewing coffee, ready to start the fight. Dawn crept through the kitchen blinds, casting slatted shadows across the tile floor. I stood by the counter, the coffee maker gurgling, its bitter steam rising as I gripped a mug too tightly. Lisa's words from last night burned in my mind, Nicholas's taunt, Margaret's sneer. My eyes were gritty from a sleepless night, my shoulders knotted with a fury I hadn't felt in years. The clock read 6:15, the suburban hum of a neighbor's lawnmower faint outside. I slammed the mug down, coffee sloshing over the rim, the dark stain spreading like my anger. I'd outsmarted bigger sharks than Nicholas in my consulting days, crooked clients, shady deals. Once I'd helped a friend recover thousands from a scam, untangling bank records like a puzzle. If I could do that at 40, I could bury a punk like Nicholas at 66. But first, I needed a plan. I grabbed my phone, scrolling to Ellen, a lawyer I'd known for decades, her number still in my contacts from when we'd tackled corporate fraud together. Gary? Ellen's voice was crisp, even at this hour. What's wrong? I paced the kitchen, the tiles cold under my socks. My daughter's boyfriend tricked her into signing over a $150,000 car. His mother's in on it, manipulating her, mocking her. I need to know my options, Ellen sighed. That's ugly, but if she signed willingly, it's legally his. File a police report first. Establish coercion. I'll dig into fraud angles, but it'll take time. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, and hung up, my jaw tight. The precinct. I'd start there. I threw on a jacket, the wrinkles in my shirt matching the creases in my brow, and drove through Chicago's suburbs, the streets lined with blooming dogwoods and manicured lawns. The dashboard clock ticked toward noon, each minute a reminder of Lisa, still asleep upstairs, broken by their betrayal. The precinct smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, its fluorescent lights buzzing like my nerves. I approached the counter where an officer with a coffee-stained tie scribbled on a clipboard. I need to file a complaint, I said, my voice steady despite the heat in my chest. My daughter was coerced into signing over her car. He looked up, his pen pausing. Details? I explained. Lisa's trust, Nicholas's pressure, Margaret's taunts, the re-registered Tesla. My hands gripped the counter, knuckles pale. She was manipulated, officer. That's not consent. He nodded, pulling out a form. We'll take your statement and look into it. If there's evidence of coercion, we can escalate it. File this, and we'll follow up. His pen scratched, dismissive, each word a brick wall. My voice rose, sharp but controlled. You're saying they can just steal from her and walk away? Unless you've got proof of fraud, yeah. He slid a form across, his eyes already on the next person in line. I filled it out, my pen digging into the paper. The officer promised to follow up, but I knew waiting was futile. The next few days I gathered information, called old colleagues, but no word came from the precinct. Frustrated, I returned to my home office, deciding to check the joint account I shared with Lisa. Something about Nicholas's behavior told me he might have gone further than I thought, but the officer's words echoed. No crime. The precinct's walls felt like they were closing in, the flickering light overhead mocking my effort. I'd raised Lisa alone, worked overtime to give her everything, and now this? I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Outside, the parking lot was hot, the asphalt shimmering under the spring sun. I leaned against my car, the metal warm against my back, and pulled out my phone. My contacts list glowed. Names from my old life, bankers, lawyers, investigators. Nicholas and Margaret thought they'd outsmarted me, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. I scrolled, my thumb pausing on a name, my resolve hardening. The phone felt like a weapon, waiting for the right target. The home office was a mess, papers strewn across the desk, a half-empty coffee mug teetering on a stack of old bills. Late afternoon sun slanted through the window, gilding the clutter as I sat at my laptop. The screen's glow harsh against my tired eyes. I'd spent the day reeling from the precinct's dismissal, but I wasn't done. I opened my banking app, needing to check the joint account Lisa and I shared, the one I'd set up for her college and emergencies. My fingers hesitated over the keys, a nagging unease curling in my gut. The page loaded, and my breath stopped. A $50,000 withdrawal, dated yesterday, stared back at me. My heart pounded. The laptops hummed loud in the quiet room. I clicked the transaction, my hands fumbling, confirming it wasn't a glitch. $50,000 gone. The cursor blinked like a warning, each flash tightening the vise in my chest. I double-checked, my fingers slipping on the mouse, but the numbers didn't lie. I stood, the chair scraping the floor, and took the stairs 2 at a time to Lisa's bedroom. The door was ajar, her childhood quilt tangled across the bed. She was awake, sitting up, her hair a mess, her eyes puffy from last night's tears. "Dad?" she said, her voice groggy, wary. "Lisa?" I said, sitting on the bed's edge, keeping my tone calm, though my pulse raced. "Did you take money from our account? $50,000? Her eyes widened, then dropped, her hands twisting the quilt. I didn't want to," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Nick and Margaret, they said I owed them, for letting Nick marry me, for securing our future. Margaret cried, said they were struggling, and Nick promised we'd use it for us, for a house someday." I leaned forward, my hands on my knees. "What did they do with it?" She swallowed, her gaze fixed on the floor. "They booked a trip to Hawaii. Nick showed me the tickets, laughing like it was a joke. Said it was a celebration for the car." Her voice cracked, guilt etching her face. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I thought I was helping them." Fury surged, hot and sharp. I stood, pacing the small room, my hand raking through my gray hair. They didn't just steal my money. They stole her trust, her dignity. I saw her at 16, her college fund growing because I'd worked nights, skipped vacations. Now they'd taken that too for a joyride in paradise. My anger wasn't a flame anymore. It was a blade, cold and precise. "Dad, please don't hate me," Lisa said, her voice small, her shoulders hunched. "I don't hate you," I said, stopping to meet her eyes. "I hate them." My words were steady, a vow. I'd make them pay, not just for the car, but for every tear, every lie. I knelt beside her, squeezing her hand. "Rest, kiddo. I'll handle this." Back in my office, I sank into the chair, the room now shadowed as dusk settled. The laptop screen glowed, the withdrawal still glaring. On the desk, an old consulting award caught the light, a reminder of battles I'd won. I opened my contacts, scrolling past names, colleagues, old clients, people who owed me favors. My jaw set, my anger a fuel now, driving me forward. I stopped at a photo on the desk, Lisa and me at her high school graduation, her smile bright, mine proud. Her smile fueled me, a reminder of what I'd fight for. I clicked a name in my contacts, my fingers steady. The laptops hum a war drum in the quiet. They'd regret crossing me, and I was just getting started. Sunlight streamed through the dusty window of my home office, warming my hands as I sat at the cluttered desk. The laptop hummed softly, its screen glowing with my contacts list, each name a potential ally in the fight I'd started. A cold coffee mug sat beside a stack of old tax files, the bitter dregs mirroring my mood. It was late April, and the faint buzz of a neighbor's lawnmower drifted in, a reminder of the world moving on while my anger burned steady. Lisa's tearful confession about the $50,000 theft and Nicholas's mocking words, "You're my driver now," fueled me. I jotted a note on a yellow legal pad, the pen scratched loud in the quiet room, and scrolled to Tom's number, a private detective from my consulting days. I dialed, my foot tapping a rapid rhythm on the hardwood floor. The phone rang twice before Tom's gruff voice answered. "Gary? Been a while. You in trouble?" "Not me," I said, leaning forward, the chair creaking under my weight. "My daughter's boyfriend, Nicholas, and his mother, Margaret. They conned her out of a $150,000 car and $50,000 from our account. I need everything you can get. Debts, arrests, anything I can use." Tom whistled low. "That's a nasty pair. I'll dig into their financials, check for priors. It'll take some time, accessing records, chasing leads. I've heard Nicholas might be flipping cars under the table, and Margaret's got a shady past. I'll need a week or two to confirm anything solid." I underlined their names on the pad, the ink bleeding slightly. "Perfect. Keep it quiet, Tom." My voice was calm, but my pulse quickened with grim satisfaction. Their greed was a crack in their armor, and I'd pry it open. I remembered a client from years back, a cocky investor who thought he'd outsmart me. I'd turned his overconfidence against him, locking him into a deal that cost him millions. If I could do that then, I could unravel Nicholas and Margaret now. Hanging up, I stood, stretching my stiff back, and pinned a photo of Lisa to the bulletin board, her at 16, laughing at a county fair, cotton candy in hand. My chest tightened. I'd sworn to protect her, and I'd failed once. Not again. Their greed would be their downfall, but I had to play this smart, patient. I sat back down, the sunlight catching the edge of an old business card on the desk, a lawyer's, maybe useful later. For a moment, I wondered if I was going too far, if Lisa would approve. Then I saw her tear-streaked face in my mind, and the doubt vanished. A week later, the laptop pinged, an email from Tom landing in my inbox. I opened it, my eyes scanning the subject line. Preliminary findings, Nicholas Russell and Margaret Russell. The attachment listed debts. Nicholas owed $20,000 on credit cards. Margaret had a lien on her car. My lips twitched, not quite a smile. This was the map to their ruin, and I was ready to chart the course. I leaned back, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, the sunlight urging me forward, a spotlight on the war I'd wage. The coffee shop buzzed with morning chatter, the clink of cups blending with soft jazz from a speaker above. I sat at a polished wooden table, the aroma of roasted beans sharp in the air, my coffee mug warm against my palms. Across from me, Sarah, my lawyer friend, flipped through a folder I'd handed her, her glasses perched low on her nose. It was early May, and the Chicago suburbs outside hummed with spring, blooming tulips, joggers on the sidewalk. My pressed shirt felt crisp, a contrast to the wrinkled mess I'd been days ago, and my eyes were sharp, focused. The folder held Tom's findings, Nicholas's debts, Margaret's fraud history. I slid it across the table, my smile subtle, controlled. "This is gold, Gary," Sarah said, her voice low, professional. "Unpaid loans, shady car deals, a fraud rap from 10 years back. They're sloppy. What's your play?" I sipped my coffee, the bitter edge grounding me. "A trap," I said, leaning forward, the table's edge pressing into my elbows. "We use their greed. I've got an intermediary, Mike, a guy I trust, posing as a wealthy investor. He'll pitch them a fake car rental franchise, something flashy, high returns. They'll need to invest the $50,000 they stole to secure it. They'll bite." Sarah raised an eyebrow, closing the folder. "Bold. If they take the bait, we've got them on fraud when the deal collapses. I'll prep the legal docs to nail them." Her pen tapped the table, a steady rhythm. "You sure they're this desperate?" "They mocked my daughter, Sarah, called her their driver." My voice stayed even, but my grip tightened on the mug. "They're desperate for status, not just cash. Tom's report mentioned they've been chasing get-rich-quick schemes for years, always falling for flashy promises. Their desperation makes them reckless, blind to red flags. This'll hook them." She nodded, slipping the folder into her bag. "I'm in. Send the email today. I'll have the fraud papers ready by next week." Back at my car, I pulled out my laptop, the parking lot quiet, except for a distant car horn. The email to Mike was drafted, the words crafted to entice. Exclusive opportunity, limited spots, $50,000 buy-in for a stake in a luxury car rental empire. I adjusted my glasses, double-checking every line, then hit send. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but anticipation. I'd negotiated deals like this before, outsmarting rivals with patience and precision. Once, I'd locked a competitor into a bad contract, watching him squirm as the terms sank in. Patience won then, and it would now. My phone buzzed, an email from Mike. Nicholas had replied, his tone cautious but eager. "Sounds promising, but we'll need details." "When can we meet your investor to verify this?" I smirked, the shop's warmth fading against the cold resolve in my gut. They'd taken the bait, just as I'd planned. For a moment, I wondered if they'd smelled the trap, but their greed was too loud, drowning out caution. I drove home, the sun climbing higher, and called Sarah from the car. "They bit," I said, my voice steady. "Mike's setting the meeting." "Good," she said, brisk. "I'm drafting the lawsuit now. Fraud, coercion, theft, we'll bury them." I parked in my driveway, stepping into the sunlight, the air sweet with cut grass. My phone buzzed again, Sarah confirming the legal papers were nearly ready. I glanced at the screen, the words a promise of justice. The sunlight hit my face, a beacon of clarity, and I knew their dark days were coming. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of a table lamp, its light pooling on the worn rug as evening settled over suburban Chicago. It was mid-May, and the curtains rustled in a spring breeze, carrying the faint hum of a refrigerator from the kitchen. Lisa sat on the couch, her knees drawn up, a pillow clutched tight. I sat beside her, my arm around her shoulders, when her phone buzzed on the coffee table, the screen lighting up with Nicholas's name. Her hand shook as she answered, putting it on speaker. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice thin, fragile. Nicholas's voice crackled through, sharp and venomous. "You set us up, Lisa. You and your dad think you're clever, huh? You'll regret this." Margaret cut in, her tone icy, dripping with scorn. "We know what your father's doing, girl. That fake deal. We're not idiots." The phone's tinny echo made their words feel closer, like they were in the room. Lisa's eyes widened, her fingers digging into the pillow. I squeezed her shoulder, my voice low, steady. "They're scared, kiddo. That's all this is." My calm was a shield, unshaken by their threats. I remembered Lisa at 12, facing a school bully who'd mocked her braces. I'd taught her to stand tall, to meet cruelty with strength. I'd helped her face monsters before, and I'd do it again. The call ended abruptly, the silence heavy, pressing against the walls. Lisa's breath hitched, her face pale, her fingers twisting a strand of hair. "What if they hurt us, Dad?" she whispered, her eyes searching mine. "They won't," I said, my tone firm, a promise. "They're lashing out because they're trapped." I stood, grabbing my phone as it buzzed. Sarah, my lawyer. I answered, stepping to the window, the street outside dark except for a street lamp's glow. "Gary," Sarah said, her voice brisk, "Nicholas and Margaret just filed a lawsuit, claiming your investor deal was fraud. It's a cheap shot. Hired some cut-rate lawyer. No evidence, no legs. I'm countersuing for fraud, coercion, and theft. We've got this." I nodded, jotting a note on a pad by the couch, my pen steady despite Lisa's worried gaze. "Thanks, Sarah. Keep me posted." Hanging up, I turned to Lisa, her eyes still wide. "It's a bluff," I said, sitting beside her again, my hand on her knee. "They're desperate, throwing punches in the dark. Our plan's on track." She nodded, but her shoulders stayed hunched, her fear lingering. I sipped a glass of water, the coolness grounding me, my eyes never leaving her. The threat stung, but my calm was ironclad, forged in years of outsmarting bigger threats than Nicholas. Our trap was closing, and their panic only tightened the noose. The phone went silent, the room still, the lamp's glow softening the edges of our fear. I pulled out my laptop, setting it on the coffee table, and opened an email from Sarah. The subject line read, "Final Lawsuit Docs." Lisa glanced at it, then at me, her expression unreadable. I clicked the email, my face a mask of calm, the silence settling around us, a calm before the storm I'd unleash. The Chicago courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper, its high ceilings amplifying the murmur of spectators. I sat in the gallery, my tie slightly crooked, my fingers tapping a soft rhythm on my knee. The wooden benches creaked under me, the air conditioner's hum a faint drone beneath the tension. Across the room, Nicholas and Margaret sat, their faces pale, Nicholas fidgeting with his sleeve, Margaret clutching her purse like a shield. I adjusted my tie, the fabric stiff against my throat, and glanced at Sarah, my lawyer, standing poised at the front, her briefcase open. The judge's chair creaked as she shifted, her eyes scanning the papers before her. Sarah's voice cut through the room, sharp and steady. "Your Honor, the defendants manipulated Lisa Hill into signing over a $150,000 car and withdrawing $50,000 from a joint account. We have recorded calls, obtained legally, proving coercion, and bank records confirming the theft." She gestured to a stack of documents, her tone unwavering. This was no accident. It was calculated. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. The recorded calls, dug up by Tom, my detective friend, captured Nicholas's smug demands, Margaret's taunting laugh. My hands stilled, the weight of months lifting slightly. I glanced at Nicholas, his jaw tight, his eyes darting to the exit. Margaret's lips were a thin line, her knuckles white on her purse. They knew they were cornered. The judge cleared her throat, her voice firm. Based on the evidence, I rule in favor of the plaintiff. The car is to be returned to Lisa Hill. The defendants will repay the $50,000 stolen, plus court costs and interest. Case dismissed. The gavel cracked, sharp and final. I exhaled, my shoulders easing, a slow nod to Sarah as she turned, her eyes bright with victory. Nicholas muttered something under his breath, his face flushed, while Margaret's scowl crumpled, her hands trembling. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Their defeat was written in their slumped postures, their whispered argument as they shuffled out. I'd kept my promise to Lisa, just like when I'd taught her to drive at 16, her laughter filling the car as we cruised the suburbs. I'd sworn to keep her safe then, and I had now. Sarah joined me, her briefcase clicking shut. We did it, Gary, she said, her voice low, satisfied. They're done. I nodded, my voice steady. Thanks to you. My mind flickered to Lisa, at home, unaware of this moment. I wished she'd been here, seen their faces fall, but I'd tell her soon enough. The ruling hit like a wave, washing away months of rage. Though a quiet concern lingered, how would she heal from this? The courtroom emptied, the sunlight streaming through high windows, catching dust motes in the air. I stood, my briefcase heavy in my hand, the leather worn but familiar. Outside, on the courthouse steps, the spring air was warm, the city alive with honking cars and distant chatter. The car keys, returned by court order, jingled in my pocket, their weight a reminder of what I'd reclaimed. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Lisa's name, my thumb hovering over the call button. The keys clinked, a sound of victory, but my work wasn't done. I needed to see her, to make sure she'd be okay. Morning light spilled across the kitchen table, painting the chipped mugs and open notebook in a soft glow. It was late May 2025, and the Chicago suburbs hummed outside, birds chirping, a radio playing faintly from the neighbor's garage. Lisa sat across from me, her hair tied back, her eyes clearer than they'd been in weeks. I sketched a budget chart in the notebook, my pen scratching steadily, the aroma of fresh coffee curling around us. I slid a plate of toast toward her, our hands brushing briefly, a quiet warmth passing between us. Okay, kiddo, I said, tapping the chart. Let's talk money. Lisa nodded, her fingers tracing the mug's handle. I messed up big, didn't I? Her voice was soft, tinged with shame, but her gaze met mine, searching. You trusted the wrong people, I said, my tone firm but kind. That's not a failure. It's a lesson. First rule, if someone pushes too hard, they're hiding something. Nicholas rushed you, didn't he? She nodded, her lips tight. He kept saying it was for us, for our future. I should have questioned him sooner, Dad. You will next time. I drew a line on the chart, marking savings. Check bank statements weekly. Verify who you're dealing with. References, records, anything. People like Nicholas thrive on trust they don't earn. I remembered teaching her to swim at 8, her small hand gripping mine as she kicked against the water. She'd trusted me then, and I'd teach her to trust herself now. Lisa scribbled a note, her hand steadier than I'd expected. I feel so stupid, she said, her voice catching. Letting them take the car, the money. I reached across, squeezing her hand. Mistakes build strength, Lisa. You're smarter than they thought. Use that. Her fingers tightened around mine, a spark returning to her eyes. I smiled, a real one, the kind I hadn't felt in months. Let's take a road trip this weekend, I said. Just us. Clear our heads. Her face lit up, a shy smile breaking through, like when we drove to Lake Michigan. Exactly. I leaned back, the chair creaking, pride swelling in my chest. She was healing, growing, but a small worry lingered. Could she stand on her own? The kitchen felt alive, the coffee's steam curling like hope, the clink of her spoon grounding us. We packed a small bag, tossing in snacks and a map, the car keys gleaming on the counter. I noticed a letter from Sarah on the table, unopened, mentioning Nicholas and Margaret's fallout. My fingers brushed it, my mind turning to their fate, but I set it aside. Lisa laughed, folding a sweater, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. I picked up the keys, their weight warm in my palm, promising a fresh start. Lisa stepped closer, her smile faint but real. Thanks, Dad, for not giving up, she said, hugging me. We stood together, looking at the Tesla, ready for a new journey, together, like old times. The driveway was quiet, the morning sun glinting off the Tesla's red hood, its polish restored after months of chaos. I ran my hand over the car's smooth metal, the keys warm in my pocket, their faint jingle a reminder of what I'd fought for. The air smelled of blooming lilacs, clean and fresh, like the world had righted itself. I stood there, my shoulders relaxed, a faint smile softening my face, thinking of the day I'd given Lisa this car, her joy, her laughter, now reclaimed. My phone buzzed, Sarah's name on the screen. I answered, leaning against the car, the metal cool against my back. "Gary," she said, her voice brisk, satisfied. "Nicholas and Margaret are done. Sold their apartment to pay the $100,000. They're in a rundown place on the edge of town now. Broke and out of moves." I nodded, my satisfaction quiet, not gloating. I pictured their smug faces, Nicholas's smirk, Margaret's taunt, erased by their own greed. "Thanks, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "Couldn't have done it without you." I hung up, tucking the phone away, my mind calm. Justice had landed, sharp and final, like the gavel in that courtroom. Lisa's text popped up, sent from her dorm. "Thanks, Dad. I'm ready for this." She was back at university, her confidence blooming like the spring around us. I saw her at 21, beaming when I handed her the keys, her trust in the world still bright. That smile was back now, and I'd fight to keep it there. I'd raised her alone, worked nights, built a life for her. This victory wasn't just mine, it was hers. I walked to the house, the gravel crunching under my shoes, and tucked Sarah's letter into a drawer, done with the past. The car's window bore a new university sticker, a small sign of Lisa's path forward. I climbed into the driver's seat, the leather soft under my hands, and started the engine. The hum was steady, like my heartbeat, carrying me toward Lisa's campus for a visit. I glanced at the empty passenger seat, imagining her there, her laughter filling the air as we'd drive, talk, rebuild. The morning felt clean, the sunlight warm